Hello, Legacy enjoyers. We are covering the Legacy 1K hosted by Face to Face Games Toronto that was held on July 7th. So apologies for the delay in getting this coverage out to you guys. But before we get into the games, just a quick announcement for the upcoming Legacy of the North Summer Invitational. This is our Comp REL No Proxy event that we hold 3 times a year where we showcase our local grinders and celebrate our Legacy community. So we will be streaming the event with live commentary, player interviews, and deck text this time around, and you'll be able to tune in and watch the event on Saturday, August 10th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The primary stream will be through Legacy of the North sponsor Enter the Battlefield, and you can find that at twitch.tv/ETB Canada. And I'll also be restreaming the event here at youtube.com/@LazyMTG. So we hope to see you in the comment and chat sections on August 10th. So with that out of the way, let's watch some Legacy. On player one side, we have someone we've featured a few times before, Chris Switalski, and his opponent is none other than Rob Jackson playing Sultai Beans. Now, I know what you're thinking. Wow, in a field of all Riskaminator, these are quite a diverse set of decks. Yes, it feels like we haven't seen Beans in a long time. I think that's the plus side about playing Paper Magic opposed to MTGO, is even though a large percentage of the meta share is Riskaminator, you know, a lot of the people in Paper, they play the decks that they have or the decks that they want to play, and unless you're kind of like a sweaty sweat, I don't think you're going to be playing Riskaminator, or I don't think you have just a set of Underground Seas just lying around all willy-nilly that you can switch your deck at a moment's notice. But we're going to see Chris takes 2 mulligans, going down to 5 here. Looks like Rob is going to keep his 6. Okie dokie, folks. Let's take a look at Chris's hand. Never mind, let's not take a look at Chris's hand. He is going to keep it. I don't think you can go lower than 5. Let's get a peek at Rob's hand. Looks like there's an Up the Beanstalk, a Tropical Island, Fatal Push. I think there's a Brainstorm, Lorien revealed. I think that's an island as well. Not sure what the very last card is at the bottom. Alright, looks like we are going to kick things off with a Tropical Island from Rob. Gonna pass it back to Chris. Chris gonna start off with just a Polluted Delta. Don't think he's going to do much more. This should be a battle of an attrition, and I think you want to be doing everything the last second that you possibly can. Rob's going to fire off a Brainstorm before Chris can get an Orcish Bowmaster. So he draws 3 cards. One of them's Ponder. I'm going to put the other 2 on the top, and he must like them. Draws, finds a Witherbloom command. Here is a Cycled Lorien revealed. Gonna shuffle away whatever the card that was put on the top from the Brainstorm. Finds an Underground Sea. So there is a lot of debate whether or not you should be going for a basic land. I don't think so. In the blind, I think you just want to be able to cast all your spells. If you get caught by the Wasteland, then you know for the future. But we're gonna see Rob play the Underground Sea that he cycled for. Gonna play the Ponder. Looks at the top 3. But what I'm saying is, Rob is also a Wasteland deck, and he has the ability to kind of loop some of the Wastelands with the Witherbloom command. So if he is going to be in a Wasteland war, hopefully he will be ahead. He picks up a Daze, gonna pass a turn. Chris going to Island Cycle, Lorien revealed, finds an Underground Sea as well. This is a little bit more risky from Chris, because he sees that he is playing against Sultai. I think the first assumption you should make is there's not really any other Sultai lists other than Beans, and you should be knowing that one of the main reasons why you play Sultai over 4-color or 5-color is because you want to have access to those Wastelands. But Chris going to fetch a Tundra off of the Polluted Delta, going to play the Underground Sea from the Lorien revealed, going to cast a Psychic Frog on his turn. In response, Rob is going to fire off a Daze to try to counter the Psychic Frog, and then Chris going to back up the Psychic Frog with a Force of Will, exiling a Ponder. So Chris successfully gets the Psychic Frog, Few on resources due to the mulligan to 5, only 2 cards in hand. Hopefully the Psychic Frog can carry him, but we know that there's a Fatal Push in Rob's hand. There it is. We're going to kick this frog into the dirt. And yeah, Rob just going to continue playing his game plan. Doesn't have another land. A little unfortunate here. So hopefully Chris realizes this. There's a Wasteland. Goes after a Tropical Island. There's a Cycled Lorien reveal. The closest thing you can get to a crop rotation. I think at this point you need to find an island. Wow, still going for a green source. This is for the up the beanstalk in his hand. This is very risky. So this is what I was kind of leaning towards earlier. Once you see that your opponent is playing Wastelands, you kind of want to get off the strategy of searching for duels if you can. Okay, Rob finds a Shieldred's Edict off of the top. I'm gonna go with an up the beanstalk, playing the Tropical Island from his turn. Up the beanstalk is gonna trigger and draw Rob a Force of Will. There's a Wasteland going to go after a Tropical Island again. Alright, so we're going to see Rob getting a little punished here for his searching. I don't think he needed to immediately play that up the beanstalk. I think having that source of mana is just a little bit better. There's a Murktide Regent because, yeah, again, if you went for an island, you would have double blue and you can play a Murktide and you'll have a threat on the board. Alright, Chris going to bounce up the beanstalk with a Brazen Borer Petty Theft side. Here's a Daze, gonna bounce the Underground Sea. Wow, okay, that's very aggressive. Chris, Prismatic Endings up the beanstalk. Here's a Force of Will from Rob, exiling Murktide Regent. Gonna go down to 19, trigger up the beanstalk, or is he missing the trigger? Okay, no, he realizes that he needs to announce the trigger, draws a card off of the Force of Will from the up the beanstalk. That Prismatic Ending gets countered. Here is a Scalding Tarn from Rob. This is going to kind of get around another Wasteland, so you don't want to be playing that Underground Sea out into the open. Going to crack this Scalding Tarn after Chris plays the Polluted Delta. Going to find an island? Please tell me we're finding an island. Yeah, he's digging deep. Wow, no. Wait, did I even see any basics? There's a Hedge Maze. There has to be a basic, right? Did I miss it? I think I just might have missed it. There's too many artworks in Magic now. Alright, Rob going to resolve the Surveil trigger. Looks like he likes it. Gonna keep it on top. Draws a card. Finds another Murktide. Down comes Underground Sea. We're gonna see him... Yeah, we're gonna see him rip this Murktide. Looks like he is gonna try to go for the maximum. Yeah, I don't think you really need to keep the specific cards in check. It's not like you're playing Delver where, like, Delirium matters. Did he draw off of the Murktide? Or is this... Or did Chris fetch it in response to the up the beanstalk trigger? Okay, so Chris fetches for Meticulous Archive, bins Prismatic Ending. The trigger resolves from up the beanstalk. Rob will draw a card, but before Rob ends his turn, Chris going to fire off a Swords to Plowshare, deals with the Murktide Regent. So that Murktide should be in the graveyard. Sorry, should be in exile, not in the graveyard. That is relevant because he does play Murktide Regents, and he can't exile Murktide to Murktide. Here's a Witherbloom command. Okay, so it's Drain 2 and then Mill 3. Tries to get a land back. Probably a Tropical. There's not much else. Plays Tropical Island and passes the turn. Chris going to fetch. Is this another Surveil land? I'm a big fan of these Surveil lands. Yeah, there's an Undercity Sewer. Gonna trigger Surveil. Yeah, being able to make your fetches into like seeing another card and then being able to fuel the graveyard is so good. Chris draws another Wasteland, finds Triumph of St. Catherine. Wow, Rob does not have another blue card to exile this to the Force of Will to counter it. Finds another up the beanstalk. So here's 2 mana. Plays another up the beanstalk. Draws a card. Finds a Misty Rainforest. Plays the Misty Rainforest. Going to pay 1 mana, gonna Murderous Cut Triumph. Get all these lands out of my discard. Alright, so we're gonna resolve this Triumph. Gonna shuffle it into the top 6 of the library instead of going to the graveyard. Off of the Beanstalk triggers, Rob does draw... I'm not sure the first card he drew, but he does draw an Underground Sea. Alright, gonna send it back. Does he miracle the Triumph? He does not. Alright, passes it back to Rob. We don't know what is in his hand. Rob gonna draw for his turn. I think that's another Lorien revealed. No, that's a Spell Pierce. Alright, Rob drops Underground Sea for the land as the land for turn. Looks like he's just gonna pass a turn. Is it another miracle? It is not another miracle. It is not a miracle. Chris going to use another wasteland, get rid of the tropical island. There's another wasteland gonna go after the hedge maze. That is 4 wastelands in Chris's graveyard. There's a Force of Will off of the top for Rob. Rob gonna crack the Misty Rainforest. So I think now Rob is certainly ahead. He's gotten rid of all of Chris's mana disruption, essentially. I don't think there's a way of him getting them back. Rob finally goes for that island, but all the wastelands in the graveyard. I guess he just doesn't have anything else, like any other lands that are searchable. But because of the Force of Wills, he can confidently deal with the triumphs. There is a Mystic Sanctuary. What is he going to put on top? Okay, very interesting. And just going to pass the turn. Is this a miracle? It is not. Wow. The luck is not on Chris's side. Plays a Flooded Strand that he drew for the turn. Going to pass it back. Rob going to draw the Ponder that he put on top. In the Ponder stack, we see that there is a Brainstorm. We couldn't really see anything else. But Rob should be very far ahead in this game. All he has to do is resolve some sort of threat, and he has the backup. He also has the disruption for the Triumph of St. Catherine. If that is what Chris is relying on, then he'll have to fight through at least one Force of Will. And that Force of Will is also going to draw Rob 2 cards from these Up the Beanstalks. Down comes Orcish Bowmaster. That was drawn off of the Ponder. And I'm going to ping Chris down to 13. Is this a miracle? It is not. Wow. That means the Triumph is on the bottom? Wow. Okay, Rob going to untap. Draws a Murktide. That is a very big threat. So Rob has Witherbloom, Command, Shieldred's Edict, Murktide, 2 Force of Wills, and a few other cards. A Spell Pierce. Not sure what else is down there, but yeah, here's Murktide. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make it big. Yep, doesn't have much else in his graveyard. Going to make an 8/8 Murktide. Going to draw 2 cards off of these Beanstalks as well. Yeah, and Chris just going to pack it up. Yeah, he knows that he can't fight through Rob's immense amount of resources in his hand. So that was just a very unlucky for Chris. Not only did he have to mulligan to 5, but could not find a Triumph of St. Catherine, even though Rob could deal with it. It was just an unfortunate situation all around. Hopefully we get to go to a game number 3, but I'm thinking too far ahead. Let's get to game number 2 first, shall we? Okie dokie, folks. We are here for game number 2. These players are going to resolve their mulligans. Instead of trying to sneak a peek at what they are holding, I'm just going to briefly go through the sideboard. So if you guys want to follow along, the deck lists are in the description below. Since Chris lost game number 1, we're just going to quickly go through. I think you do want to be bringing in these Orcish Bowmasters, maybe an Opposition Agent, the Surgical Extraction, and the Vexing Baubles. I don't think you need much else. For Rob, the Carpet of Flowers, Dismembers are okay. Maybe the Leovold is definitely really good. Probably the Nile Spell Bombs and the Surgical. Maybe the Swamp too. But we're going to see Chris start off with Meticulous Archive, going to Surveil, and I think he kept it on top. But then, yeah, I think he kept it on top because that Flooded Strand is being played for the turn. Right? Sorry, I think I missed it. It must have been, because Rob has to go second. He can't stifle the trigger of Meticulous Archive. So he must have kept on top, pass it back, Rob play, is it Polluted Delta, and then pass back. Then Chris tried to crack the Flooded Strand, but then gets stifled. He plays another Flooded Strand. There's Rob. Sorry, I'm not speeding through this. Chris plays Flooded Strand for his turn, passes it back to Rob. Rob going to draw for his turn, finds Polluted Delta, plays Polluted Delta, and then cracks it. Going to search, hopefully for an island. He does not. Okay, he's going for a tropical island. Like I said, it is technically still an island. I would like to see him fetch for a basic island in the face of someone who wastelanded him 4 times, but Really wants to get this up the beanstalk onto the battlefield. I think this is an okay play if you had a follow-up land. Oh, he does. Okay, so I'm not hating this play as much as finding it, but we're gonna see as much as finding a basic island, but we'll see what happens. Chris going to find an undercity sewer from the Flooded Strand fetch. Both players are going to be at 18. We're going to see Chris surveil the Cling to Dust into the graveyard and draws for his turn. Going to drop a Tundra, has all 3 colors of mana, and down comes Psychic Frog. Does Rob have an answer? This would be a huge tempo swing if Rob lets this resolve and cannot deal with it, because this Psychic Frog is just going to be drawing cards every turn. However, I will say Sultai does do quite well against creature-based threats. Rob does have the Force of Will, though. We're going to see him fire it off. Brings himself down to 17. Should be drawing it off of the Up the Beanstalk trigger. He does. I think that was a Wasteland that he found. No, it was a Tropical Island. All right, finds another Up the Beanstalk. So I think the problem here is that Chris relies on the Psychic Frog for his card advantage. Rob relies on the Up the Beanstalk, and we've seen Rob successfully land these Up the Beanstalks when he needs them. All right, so instead of playing a second one, gonna go for an Orcish Bowmaster. Not sure how I feel about that. I think if this was the play, I wouldn't have done it during the main phase. I would have seen what Chris did instead, because there is quite a possibility that he tries to cantrip. This play also opens him up to what Chris just did. Is back in when Orcish Bowmaster was first being played, there's a common phrase where it was like, whoever played the first Orcish Bowmaster is losing the Bowmaster War. And we saw exactly here that was the case, where Rob didn't necessarily need to play that Orcish Bowmaster during his main phase, so he gets punished because then Chris has a target for his Bowmaster. We are going to see Chris not playing a land for his turn. He's just going to play the Bowmaster, kill Rob's Bowmaster, passes back. Rob going to play the Misty Rainforest, finds the basic island finally. Now follows up with a second Orcish Bowmaster, killing Chris's Orcish Bowmaster. So there's 3 Orcish Bowmasters that have been played this turn or this game. Rob going to also follow up in the same turn with an Up the Beanstalk, draws a card, passes back to Chris. Chris going to drop down a Scrub land. And there's a 4th Orcish Bowmaster targeting Rob's Bowmaster, makes his Orc Army token a 2/2. Can't really attack because Rob also has a 2/2. Rob going to play Underground Sea. He is significantly ahead on this board. However, in the face of this Orcish Bowmaster, these Up the Beanstalks kind of become a little problematic. Wow, he's playing Up the Beanstalk in the face of an Orcish Bowmaster. Not a huge fan of that. Gets himself pinged down to 15, grows the Orc Army token. I would have liked to see him attack first if he was going to do that. Here's a Fatal Push. Okay, so was the Fatal Push drawn off of the Up the Beanstalk? Well, this is a little bit confusing. There's also a Murderous Cut in Rob's hand. And a Shield's Edict. Wow, he has all of the removals, so this was played. I think a lot could be learned from rewatching this. All right, so swinging in with the Orc Army after Shield's Edict gets used, forcing Chris to sacrifice the Orc Army or the Orcish Bowmaster. Here's a Cling to Dust from Chris's hand, going to exile Shield's Edict during Rob's end step, gets to draw a card, going to draw for his turn, plays an Underground Sea. 3 mana, down comes Teferi. This gets to bounce the Orc Army token if needed. Yeah, gonna get rid of the damage on the board. Not really any use of going after those Up the Beanstalks. But now, Chris can win Counter Wars. This is gonna be a big deal. I wonder if there's there's an Orcish Bowmaster from Rob. Once again, gets rid of the Teferi and just passes the turn. Wow, that's 3 Orcish Bowmasters from Rob. And that was a talk deck, because we know that he has a Murderous Cut in his hand. All right, what does Chris have up his sleeve? There's a Lavinia. All right, Rob taking a raid. So if you guys don't know what this card is, it's 2 mana 2/2. Your opponents can't cast non-creature spells with mana value greater than the number of lands they control. And then whenever they do cast a spell, if no mana was cast to spend it, or if no mana was cast to cast, if no mana was spent to cast it, it counters that spell. So it's like a Vexing Bauble. There's a Murderous Cut from Rob. I think you could just basically hard cast it. I don't think you really need to exile cards from your graveyard. If they are lands, I guess it's fine because you can save them. It doesn't really help for Murktide. But there should be triple triggers off of these Up the Beanstalks. I don't think he announced it. So they should be missed triggers. Here's a Swords to Plowshare off of the... or from Chris. But he does announce the triggers now. So this needs to be... there's a Surgical Extraction. Swords to Plowshare is going to resolve. Pushes Rob back up to 17. So Rob drew Force of Will, Brainstorm, Surgical off of the Murderous Cut Up the Beanstalk triggers. He is going to use Surgical Extraction. Is he targeting the frog? I'd probably target the Cling to Dusts. Wow, targeting Swords to Plowshares. Okay. I guess that's also a decent target. Chris in his hand has Brazen Borrower, Vexing Bauble, Triumph of St. Catherine. Doesn't have that 5th source of mana, so can't cast the Triumph. Vexing Bauble is okay. It prevents Rob from casting Force of Wills and the like. Alright. Going to cast a Vexing Bauble. Probably just going to pass the turn. This Brazen Borrower can bounce the Orc Army token. Looks like he is just going to pass. Here's a Brainstorm from Rob. Finds another Brainstorm, Polluted Delta, and the Murktide Regent. So this is pretty good for Rob. He does have... so now that he has drawn the Murktide Regent, he can exile his graveyard with... oh, but there is the Vexing Bauble. So I wonder if Rob can bait out Chris to use and cycle the Vexing Bauble. Wow. Oh, okay. So this is in response to the Vexing Bauble. Sorry, this is my mistake. So Force of Will is going to counter the Vexing Bauble. And he gets to draw 3 cards. There's a land. So now he can cast the Triumph of St. Catherine. But he has drawn 3 fresh new cards. Wow, is that another Up the Beanstalk? I think you can just lean on playing the Murktide Regent and then trying to take over the game from here. Although it's debatable because Brazen Borrower is also kind of a threat. Here's Wasteland, going to deal with a source of mana from Chris. That's going to stop him from casting the Triumph of St. Catherine. So it looks like Chris in his hand has Up the Beanstalk, Murktide Regent. I think it's a Polluted Delta and there's a Fatal Push. Here's a Cling to Dust being escaped from Chris. So does get to exile a card from Rob's graveyard. I wonder what he's going to go after. I think if he goes after if he goes after a creature, he gains life, right? I think he gains life if it's a creature, but if it's not a creature, he gets to draw a card. Pretty sure that's what it is. So he is going to go after Murderous Cut. That's strange. Is it strange? It might be strange. But now he's tapped out. So here is Orc Army going in for 1. Gonna see Rob go to the second main phase. Is he playing another Up the Beanstalk? I don't think you need this many. This is a little overboard. Okay, so the reason why I don't like this, if you guys are kind of new to Legacy, is Up the Beanstalk is a card where typically it is a May ability. But Up the Beanstalk is not a May ability. The triggers goes on the stack and you have to draw a card. So this is actually now reasonable for Chris to think that he might be, if he can live long enough, he might be able to deck out Rob. If he has multiple Brazen Borrowers or can life gain enough, the hardest part about this is Chris will need to be able to resolve his spells. That's the biggest issue. Because, Rob is drawing 4 cards a turn, he just has such an immense amount of resources over Chris that Rob can effectively control. It's just that Rob needs to find a way to win faster than Chris, or faster than he can kill himself through drawing. So this was actually a pretty decent call from Rob to go after the Swords to Plowshares that he did with the Surgical Extraction earlier in the game. We're going to see Chris cast Thoughtseize, targeting Rob. So he's going to try to gauge and see how fast Rob can win. Okay, so he has nothing but lands, Ponder, and Fatal Push. So if Chris can deal with the Murktide, he could just bounce the Murktide region and delay him. And that's gonna force Rob to draw cards. There's a Petty Theft. Yep, gonna bounce the Murktide region. So here's another 5 cards coming out of Rob's deck if he wants to cast that Murktide again. I think also another thing is if you were baiting out, because Rob saw that there was a Brazen Borrower in Chris's hand, I don't think you go for the maximum size. Because Chris also has a lower life point count than 20, you don't need to go for max. You could have gone for a mid-ranged Murktide Regent, force Chris to use the Brazen Borrower, and then you play a max size Murktide Regent to end the game. Okay, we're gonna see Rob cast a Brainstorm, finds Carpet of Flowers. So this is I know you guys are being nice, but this is a comp REL event. And if you brainstorm, your opponent doesn't necessarily know what's in your hand because they don't know which lands you put on top. So you can kind of pick them up and shuffle it so you don't have to play with your hand open. But we're going to see Rob anyway cast a Murktide Regent to draw 4 cards. Deck is looking kind of thin. Has a bunch of lands. We're going to see how this game progresses. Gonna swing in for 1. Chris goes down to 10 to Rob's 15. So Chris has Triumph of St. Catherine in his hand, has a Brazen Borrower on an adventure, facing down Murktide Regent and an Orc Army. Rob's going to go to discards Flooded Strand and Polluted Delta that Chris knows about. Chris going to go down to 9, fetches Tundra. So now he can cast a Triumph of St. Catherine. Sorry, he can attempt to cast a Triumph of St. Catherine. Whether or not it resolves is completely up to Rob. And if Rob uses something like Force of Will, then he's going to have to draw cards. I don't know if it's going to be a Force of Will. I think we've actually seen the majority of them, because early in the game, he went Force, Exile, Force. Only 3 cards left in his discard. Flooded Strand, Polluted Delta, Wasteland. Does Chris have another Brazen Borrower? That's the question. I think you need to cast... If you don't have a Brazen Borrower, you need to cast Triumph. One or the other. You need the Triumph to be able to gain you life. Or if you have the Brazen Borrower and you can resolve it, then you need to bounce the Murktide Regent again. He does play 2 in his list. Another thing you do is Cling to Dust to gain life. Wow, Surgical Extraction on Wasteland. Okay. So now we are looking at Rob's hand. Fatal Push, I think that's a Dismember. It's in Phyrexian. Murderous Cut, Scalding Tarn, Witherbloom Command, Hedge Maze, and Polluted Delta. This play is... I guess it's okay. You don't really have much else to do. You kind of use it as a bluff, but I don't think Rob is worried too much. This Murktide is 5 damage. Orc Army is 6 damage. So you have to play the Triumph now. I guess in this case, how much is Cling to Dust's escape? Man, it's 4 mana. Okay, he's gonna Cling to Dust. Exiles the land. So he gets to draw a card. Yeah, this is something I probably would have liked to see Chris do, is maybe go after one of the Orcish Bowmasters earlier on in the game. Gonna take 6 damage, go down to 1. Yeah, I don't think I agree with this Cling to Dust. He could have also just flashed in Brazen Borer and blocked the Murktide region for another turn. But we're gonna see Rob take it in 2 with Sultai Beans. Alright, everybody. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I will see you guys for round number 3 in the face-to-face event. Have a good one.